Ah,
Recording in progress.
super.
So yeah, here we are in lovely red.
Tatooine.
Yeah. So what
Are you tattooed? Too? I
I
tattooed
I
myself when I was young.
you tattooed yourself?
I Tatooine'd me.
Ah, nice.
Well, I got a guy to do it.
Yeah. What is that? A barbed wire or something? Is that?
Yeah, you have to rake your flesh and keep doing it until the blood runs crusty.
Yeah.
It's weird. Why would you
Wasn't
do
it?
that?
It brings up that quote for me. It brings up that quote from Apocalypse Now. What was it? When he says, "I'd love to be able to do that impression," but when he said, "What doesn't he?" He's stroking his hair. When he's stroking his head, and he's saying, "The genius, the passion,
Excuse me.
the passion. They would hack off their own children's arms."
As long as it wasn't their own arm.
Yeah.
Oh
How selfish.
dear.
Yeah. Anyway,
What
that's a
are
good
you
start, isn't
doing?
it? That'll get a few people clicking to the next video. Um. Anyway, so
Well, I mean, preview, we will be talking about bandits, and that is more or less how they
Bandits.
live.
I mean, that's a great. I mean, Apocalypse Now is a great film, and I think you can. There's at some point we could also do a talk on that. I mean, it's incredible. It
We should do reaction videos, watch have the whole movie playing, and we can talk
yeah,
on top of it
yeah. I like that. I like that. Yeah, yeah.
and invite a guest.
To play the character, so we don't like a bald guest.
No, but it would be really nice to strip it and to peer more towards like the deeper layer of consciousness that is speaking through these media.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I mean to speak about. Because I think Apocalypse Now does raise that whole issue of the war that is sold to you, the packaged, all singing, all dancing entertainment, the packaging of a whole war philosophy for all of society. And that's part of it's an ongoing theme that we talk about psyops and societal wide hypnosis.
Is it
And
in John or Revelations where they speak of wars and rumors of wars? This
yeah,
is what they
it's
are.
a
They're
lovely
films. They're rumors of
That's a
wars
lovely expression. I mean, it's wars and rumors of wars. Yeah, the
on
actual
our screens.
war. Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Really, mostly we have rumors. There's a rumor of war in Ukraine constantly at the moment. In Ukraine, it's war, but for us, it's just constant.
Also, the rumors of what comes next. I mean, if every
Mm.
time that we get now, we've got oh, there could be another pandemic. That's the other, and then if you watch your stomach turn, it's like, can I really get through another one of those bloody things sitting at home in another lockdown or something? I mean, in terminal, but I don't think there. I always remember I have a good book here about hypnosis and brainwashing. I think it's Merlo or something. It's a classic, and he talks about how in the Soviet times you just needed to go into the neighborhood and say, perhaps there'll be tanks on the streets next week. Yeah, and he said, but from psychology, people telling each other that perhaps there would be a tank, it was enough. And they understood from psychology that you don't even need real tanks. You just have to have rumors of tanks. Yeah. And I always find that always stuck in my mind. It's like, because hypnosis is all about things you don't, just enough fear so that you don't
The
actually think.
indication of something, the implication of something,
Yeah, or
which is a
it-
distraction from the actual trick.
yeah, and I think that's that's when hypnosis starts to happen, or does happen, when you don't check the the words that are suggesting things to you. And they do this all the time. And I think that's the huge thing, to that again is like a subtext that we're always trying to bring to the back to the table, is this question, because still don't think people get it, and I think that you do have to keep banging on about it, that this whole hypnosis thing, like Steiner said, that was the deepest form of black magic, was hypnosis, because you take away someone's karma. You can't, if you are hypnotized, you don't even know the things that you, about the reality that you live in. And
So in essence, you came into life and then fell asleep, and so how could you possibly complete any of the plans you'd set for yourself?
exactly, and I think this is so far reaching, because it's of course, if you go to sleep and reality is something vastly different, you're going to have all the toys to keep you asleep, because it's artificial. This is great for the whole system, all of the
Yeah,
food, all of the
yeah,
clothes, all of the new
yeah.
tech, all of the.
And there's we keep talking about they, and there are actual individuals who are propagating all this quite consciously, as well as many who just like bandwagoners and so forth. But also another facet in that, and however viewers want to consider it as like the collective unconscious, the archetypes, or angelic realms, that greater realms of the cosmos that are involved in our evolution, because perhaps because we're not allowing ourselves to be aware of this greater nature that is teeming the universe. They have to get on with their karma and their missions. And if we're not sort of keying ourselves in with that at the same time, that a lot of what they need to do has to come to us unconsciously, and then it becomes a bad thing because then we're captured by it. So, a lot of the art and the inspirations in our media, I believe it's kind of like a double-edged thing. On the one hand, it can be a hypnosis that is sort of capturing us and sending us down a certain way. But on another way, it's also has great truths that if we could bring them to greater consciousness, then we would be working together with those things in a fashion that would be freeing instead of sleep making.
Mhm.
Did
Yeah,
that
I
make
agree.
sense?
I think there's two things there. I mean, the second point is absolutely in a positive way. If you, because they do pack these things, and again, let me retrace that before saying they package these things. Again, let's question that. It's important to question that they,
Exactly.
because immediately I don't want to get into this thing of getting trapped in that dialectic where we've got a group that are, you have to bring the spiritual aspect back on the table and say, anyone who is doing any, and I'm not naive, there are people who know how to do hypnosis and manipulate and things like this, but you
Mm.
have to get back that understanding of the resistant powers in the world. The You have to bring the question of evil back on the table and say, no, this is a subject that has to be spoken about. You can't avoid it. And even if the word evil sounds like all spooky and supernatural, you can take that out of it too and say, no, there's techniques of how this stuff works.
Yeah.
And
Can I just There's just one thing I think is really important to flag up with evil. That evil, I believe, having considered it for some time, is, and I'm with Rudolf Stein on this, that evil is misplaced good. And so referring back what I'm saying, say angelic beings, archetypes, collective unconscious, whatever, and your plan is like now in this stage of evolution, humanity is to become more cosmopolitan. The old tribal national divisions were good for a while, but we're moving on to a new stage, and there's this cosmopolitanism is where what we want to be able to work with. Now, either that can be a good thing in that human beings spontaneously and out of their own realization become more cosmopolitan, or they don't, and so then it becomes a get immigrants to swish them around the whole world, bung everyone together, no matter who they are, in a smart city, and make them cosmopolitan, make them into it. And then it's evil. Do you see what I'm saying? So what's evil could be good if it's done in a conscious way, but when it's sort of slipped in and it's enforced because it's not being taken up consciously, then it can become an evil thing. In this
Well,
example, cosmopolitanism.
there was something very interesting that Steiner said that it took me a while to get my head around it, and it's an interesting thing to reflect on, and it's in the lectures where he does speak about hypnotism and on the world stage, and it took me a while, and it's anyway, I'll try and relate it. So he says, if the truth of where we're at in evolution is cosmopolitanism, and you present it to the world, but you don't give people the conscious education to understand it, then the people themselves will seek to reject it. Yeah, because unconsciously you don't want to do something you don't fully understand. So what then happens is you have movements of nationalism. Now, you said to me before about color revolutions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look at how that dialectic is actually perfect. So you don't actually, when do we ever have a discussion about the United Nations in Parliament? And yet the World Health Organization and everything in the United Nations runs everything.
They tell all our national governments what
And
to
yet
do. Yeah.
that's never in the news. It's never
Yeah.
discussed in Parliament. It's not, it's just, oh, it's just accepted. Now that's a prime
Yeah.
example of how something that is cosmopolitan, the United Nations, never gets debated, never gets discussed. You see, we don't have any mass public education about that. And then if
So we feel excluded and naturally want to resist that.
yeah, you resist it, and then you have you have the Brexits and the Trump thing in America, and France first, and Spain first, and Portugal first, and everyone then gets their nationalisms, and then you can work with the dialectic because you manage the
Mm.
swing from nationalism, and
Yeah.
all the time you keep hidden that you've held the cards, which is actually, everyone talks about these things like they're present. This goes back 100 years. This was all set up after the Second World War and before. And so nothing, we don't get to discuss reality because it's managed. It's a fake construct. And then look at all the discussions we have with most people, and a lot of the time in some of those in the group, in Facebook groups, you see people discussing politics. Yeah, you don't, it just goes from one dialectic to the other, one person getting angry because they've got their views which have been touched, and they get sensitive about it swings from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, and I'm
It
not
goes
saying,
nowhere.
everybody has their love of the place where they live and the place where they come from. I mean, I love the British Isles,
But
like you.
that's culture. That's not should not be politics.
Well,
And
yeah,
they should have nothing, absolutely nothing to do with economics.
yeah, yeah, I agree, but that's the state where we're in, and you see
Yeah.
how deep the hypnosis is, where you can't. I mean, one of the conditions for the Christmas conference, which, okay, nobody actually refers to these statutes anymore, but politics and dogma. You shouldn't. You have to go beyond politics and dogma to actually be able to do any esoteric research, and yet you have to talk about this endlessly before you can even. So you never start, and
Yeah.
that is the when you say, well, what, why do we need to know about occult hypnosis? This is the swinging pendulum, which incidentally I gave you that quote to the other day, which is in Pisa, from Galileo.
Hmm,
I
hmm.
can send it.
Ah, right. There's the connection. I had pondered that because I caught that context a few days ago.
I mean, that's wonderful to see that all of the heliocentric system as a meditation on the lamp in the church, with all of the wonder of the decoration around the church revolving around the sun. But then as soon as you see that it's the swinging from one side to the other, and whatever we would create outwardly has its then mirrored inverse. Again, this is
So it's a capture in an endless oscillation. One just ends up fascinated from the swing from one side of the spectrum to the other side of the spectrum. Trump, Biden, bling, blong. And so you're saying that that is symptomatic. Galileo's discovery is symptomatic of our sort of mind state today. Whereas Rudolf pointed out in his seminal work as the foundation for everything, the real oscillation, which we could talk about at an appropriate point, the oscillation that we can, that is a living oscillation that we're all in. And so, it's not, it's not an oscillation that can capture us by fascination.
Well, as you could even say the oscillation between fully waking life. So you have 12 o'clock midday, you're fully extended out in the material world. You at work, you have your lunch break, the sun's high in the sky. And then that lamp, you have this whole world before you. That lamp is going to swing back though through dusk into full midnight, which you remember nothing of. And again, this would be a good analogy, this swinging of the lamp, to say, look at history, look at what's going on at this point in history, and realize all of that is like a world that's illuminated by this lamp. But are you aware of what happens to the lamp when it swings back the other way? Because that is the whole spiritual understanding of what's going on at the present time. And that actually you have to have both, because that will determine where the swing goes, where the outer, what manifests in the outer swing is dependent on what has been done by the inner swing. Yeah.
It's really interesting because Aniel posted today a quote from Biensa Giorno, Peter Duanov, about the heartbeat. So the beat, a rhythm. And he said everybody's heartbeat is unique, has a different sort of frequency, but everybody at a certain point there's a pause. And it's that pause where, where we're all connected to something else in the universe. And everybody has it. They have their own neat pause moment. And I believe you were touching on that there when it swings back to, as the pendulum swings back to us at the top point, there's a pause and then it can go back and then to the outer, and then there'll be a pause there and a response.
Well, I mean, that's very lovely, because in that pause is something which could unite us all. And to bring those questions back on the table of cosmopolitanism and what could unite us all, this is again one of the things that you're not allowed to talk about. In a way, you're not. I mean, who talks about these things? These, it's like already taken care of. Like, why aren't these things up for debate in the Houses of Parliament, for example?
So which thing specifically are you referring to now for the
So
Houses of Parliament?
true cosmopolitanism, and
Oh,
having
right,
now
yeah.
they'll say that all of those things are already taken care of by the United Nations, by the
Okay.
WWF,
Right,
by
yeah.
all of the NGOs and things. They've
But
already got all these things like tied up.
But that's the point, isn't it? It's this old aristocratic impulse where they're like, well, don't worry, we've got it sorted. It's all been organized.
Yeah,
You don't have to think about it. And then
yeah,
there's all us masses. They were like, for fuck's sake, tell us what's going on. I feel cosmopolitan. Do you know what I mean? Listen to me and my mate, and don't just organize it for us. Thank you very much.
yeah. Yeah, indeed. Well, this is something I'm struggling with, and it might sound very uh basic, or it might sound very unworked through, but maybe it's good like that. And I want things to be back on the table. I want idealism.
Exactly.
I say it like this, and it was
Right.
already too complicated, but I want idealism, political idealism back on the table. And that's not, I don't know how I'm going to do it, or if it's something that has to be done esoterically. I'm also, of course, open to that. But how do we as a society, or do we as humanity bring these ideas of idealism back on the table and not allow them to be manufactured and packaged for us?
Yeah.
Like, and this is what I mean about the United Nations and climate change and sustainability, and because we've been given all of these buzzwords, but I want to take them back. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I'm up for that, but I want to be able to talk about climate, and I want, I think, all of those issues
Mm-hmm.
of Greta Thunberg and sustainability, and even all of the woke stuff, like
Mhm,
gender,
mhm,
and
mhm, mhm. It's
that's
all good.
fine.
It's all great. So let's talk about it,
It's
not
all
have it
great. Yeah.
organized for us and then rammed down our throats. But Richard, I don't think we're ever that what you're talking about, I believe, is absolutely correct, and I'm with you all the way. But it won't be possible until and unless the Rishi Sunaks and all the other bandits and criminals that are in charge,
Yeah.
complete atheists or,
But
or,
that's
or just theists.
I think that's the lovely thing, because now we can start talking about that. I want to bring those terms also back on the
Okay.
table.
Okay.
Bandit. Yeah, that you are like, to speak about people um
Gangs.
as to what they are. If you find out that somebody has done something that is corrupt, that you call it. I mean, there's this Andrew, what's his name, Andrew Bridgen or
Yeah.
something, who's recently, one
Been thrown
voice
out. Yeah.
crying in the wilderness. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
again, this is,
He's not stopping. He's still going. He's getting support.
yeah, and this is fantastic. And I think we're at that point where literally the people who are not able to speak of morality anymore,
Hmm.
you can start to hear it. You can
Hmm.
start to see it in the bodily gestures. They won't be able to
Hmm.
look at you in the eye. This is what
Hmm.
Andrew was talking about. I think it's lovely. They were his colleagues, and some of these lobbyists in the houses of parliament could literally not look him in the eye because of their own immorality and dishonesty in the face of what's been going on.
And that's how it can all it can all just crumble to the ground straight away because they know they're wrong. Do you know what I mean? They're just opportunists who have, sort of bought into it and they think I got to ride this wave or else, I might lose my cushy
Well,
career or
this is
whatever.
why I don't feel demoralized. And I think
Yes.
after a year of the lockdown, I did feel demoralized. I think many people did. You went through like a dark night of the soul, thinking this is, sort of sensing the ghosts. I think we spoke about it before, sensing the ghosts of the last century, and
Hmm.
it was quite very disturbing, and getting sick and things like that, and lying in bed thinking, am I ever going to get out of this flat? And then but then there was a moment when it lifts somehow. And okay, it's not just the lockdown lifting, because
Hmm.
there's lots of other crap going on that gets you down. But I think something happened where there is something that comes back, that is a belief that people can speak again with fire,
Yeah.
You know, again, this is something that we spoke about a while back, is about people trying to take the fire out of your words. And it's not about going around offending people, but
It's just a holy fire. It's not personal.
yeah, there people feel passionately, and whether it's seeing that chart the other day where you see the profits of Zuckerberg and all the other
The bozos.
bozo, that's a nice word. And once you see that chart and see the massive shift of wealth, and then people in the Amazon factory who they don't even allow.
Well, that's what that chart indicates. All those figures, it's not about money. It's about these figures are slaves. That's people's lives that you have trapped. That's all those figures are. That is slavery in action. That's how
Yeah.
many lives they have all individually captured. That's all it
Well,
is.
see, this
That's
is the
all
thing.
wealth
And
is.
although it might sound vehement or fiery to speak, I think that's what's absolutely needed, because you have to call what are we going to do if we can't call a spade a spade?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
who's defending this system now with like gargantuan profits? I mean, the only people who are going to defend that are people that
Want gargantuan slave
want
profits too.
gargantuan
Yeah.
slavery. And I think
Yeah.
one has to call out people's morality, if that, and then they'll come with, yeah, I know the answer. The answer will be then, oh, well, there's a trickle down effect, like everyone, that means that everyone will get, trickle down. And if you're lucky, you can go and look after people's kids.
Yeah.
In
How,
this.
How about nobody comes to clean your toilet again ever? Trickle that down into your flipping environment.
Yeah, I mean,
Ju-
there is an indignation because there's just huge arrogance there, and
yeah,
there's, whether it's pumping sewage into British seas after because we're free of EU regulations. It's like some of these things are just
the, the anger is out there now, and people are coming together and agreeing enough is enough, and we can do something different. But what I think this means, Richard, is you flagged up, they're already talking of a new pandemic. People won't take it the way they did the last one. So I think what that means is before they can do a new pandemic on the world, they will have to do an internet shutdown, because this is how we are connected at the moment.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's we might have to go through that shutdown, then another pandemic shutdown, and find our local communities that are as angry in a centered and justified fashion, that would have this fire that you're talking of. That might have to be a necessary next step.
Or it could also be that it's not possible to bring in another one. There is that it would not be possible. And
Because
I think
it would the fabric of society itself would just crumble too quickly without communications.
yeah, I mean, I think that there is a balance to these things, and
Right.
and just looking at it not as all powerful force that is against you.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it is. I think that isn't necessarily the case.
Well, no, it's not. The power's not in the hands. It's only in the hands while the trick is still working. So yes.
But yeah, I mean, and again, the question of I think again it's good to bring this subject back, the they, and who they are.
Well, that's why I mentioned that there's a they, and then there's a greater they, which are beings beyond this planet,
Yeah. So I think
not
that's
aliens from outer space.
yeah, and I think that's one of the great strengths of anthroposophy, is when you can then you do the classification of demons or the different bodies, you know, demons and ghosts or phantoms, and to be able to differentiate what they are, and to also look at the different ways that you can be deceived. And a lot of this is kind of elementary psychology, which, you know, Steiner is flagging these up 100 years ago, but a lot of this knowledge has flown into psychology. And if you just look at the different ways that we've all become cuter to how other people twist and deceive us in everyday life. And I think if you this is part of understanding what in the Egyptian mysteries was being able to walk through the gates and the different beings. I mean, I'm jumping quite a lot deeper by evoking that, but the whole question of the inner earth and those beings that confront you when we take humanity as having crossed the threshold to the spiritual world, that these are part of what we're seeing in society is aspects of the inner earth. And I think that when these subjects are also brought back to the table, then one can actually take a much deeper interest in what are the ways in which my mind is darkened. What are the ways in which my consciousness is shut down by society? Yes. Since childhood? Yes. Through my education? Yes. And through the whole culture in which I live. And I think once that is better appreciated, you understand. I mean, this is why in Hollywood and those secret societies, they all love their Egyptian, you know, they're always doing the eyes and they all love their Egyptian stuff.
Mhm.
Because somehow, again, that's something that's kept from us, and it's deep esoteric knowledge of how the fifth epoch mirrors the Egyptian epoch.
Mhm.
And if we understood why that is relevant, instead of it just being like a chart,
Mhm.
like, oh,
Mhm.
3 mirrors Golgotha and 3 mirrors 5, and then we get it on a chart and we think, oh, it doesn't really matter. But in secret societies in Hollywood, for example, they litter everything with Egyptian occult.
Mhm. So they're evoking these gates and other rituals. To what end? Do you know what I mean? Because we seem to have been talking a lot about to capture us, but in actual fact, those gates were portals of initiation. So either they repelled one, or one passed through them. And
Exactly. So the way these gates work is those gates are put out there in the media, and also in the whole, what we're struggling with in this whole discussion as well, is those gates are put out there. And as soon as one sees a gate subconsciously, one recoils and says, "Ah, I don't want to know any more about that," or, you know, this sounds very complicated, and I don't want to go there. Yeah, and that's how the the masses are kept out of the temple. Now, if you do that, you have an awful lot of power. It's like,
mm,
if you know how to do things with codes and secret signs and all of that kind of thing, and all of your buddies are also in the handshake club and everything, then you can manage your reality in a very different way. Because I can then just say to you, or you can say to me, hey Richard, we, even if you've only got a little bit of money, come and buy this land out there. We're going to do this, and within 5 years you're going to have enough money so you won't have to ever work again. Now that
mhm,
changes your, if you're, you know, normal people that are not in that world, we struggle. We have to go and make honest money. Yeah. And then, again, these sound like very basic concepts, but this means you still have morality. You have to make honest money. And I also want to bring these subjects back to the table. What is honest money? Because what are you doing if you've suddenly got, age 21, enough money to never work again, and the rest of your life's just going to be partying and going and doing some occult rituals and swanning around on a yacht or something like that? I would question that person's morality. And I think we need to come back in our society to actually, if I see a guy, some old, excuse my French, I'm not going to say it, but if I see some old guy like driving around in his, it's again, it's like feeling the fire of it. It's like it's not impressive. It's getting away from this also this guru worship of people like, like you see on LinkedIn or sometimes on YouTube, like this fawning, over Steve Jobs, and like it's like there was a great comedy routine about that. I was almost about to go into it, but there was a whole comedy routine about, Steve Jobs. He made a phone. It's like,
Yeah.
or
I'm going to push back a little bit though,
yeah,
Richard.
I need it. I was going off
about honest money, making honest money, because I think the problem is that when we push ourselves a little bit, we find that we're exactly the same as the ones that just want to fleece everyone else and do nothing for the rest of their lives. For example, I used to go and protest against Tesco's, taking over all the high streets and every high street and stuff like that. And then I took a while, and then I realized, but my local corner shop guy, if he could be the boss of Tesco's, he would be there in a shop. He's no different. What is the difference?
no, it's good.
So I think that's part of a capture in the dialectics. They are the bad guys and we're the good guys. But until we realize exactly what, economy and what, am I making an honest living when I go and sell myself to the highest bidder?
You're absolutely right. And I think that's exactly the next step, because it's like, then you say, okay, then Richard, if you want, if in this world, what is it that you want to do? Because I don't think anyone wants to do nothing.
No, exactly.
You have things that you want to do with your time, and it's going, do we have to kill ourselves in burnout, or to actually then earmark a few years when we're pensioners or something?
Yeah. That's the old sadhu system. You spend your life, looking after your family, making a living, and then at the end of it, you can retire and become a holy ascetic.
Yeah.
That doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
We can go beyond that now. We can start right at the beginning and just work for each other instead of for ourselves.
No, but the point I was trying to make with honest, do I earn honest money? Are
you a slave or a slaver? But neither of those is really satisfactory.
Yeah, and it's also not satisfactory in saying that I'm honest and somehow I get a kick off being righteous in the face of an evil empire. Because that's also not very satisfying. So
if all one has as an option is to then become, the new emperor, because if one doesn't have any other vision of the way things can be, that is all that happens. Every revolution turns into its
well, look at what happened to, in the last, few years, and I was sitting there, and there's all these thousands of offers about become a online entrepreneur, and this is the new
and what's that? That's just a Ponzi scheme of other people's attention. Is
Yeah,
that what you want to do? Just capture everyone's attention so you can do whatever you like?
yeah, and then you kind of you just see this kind of future world of sitting on the computer for hours, and it's also very dissatisfying. And
But it would be all right if we were thinking of it a different way, in the sense of like, I'm just giving freely of whatever I do. After my partner and my son are bored of listening to me, I can talk to other people endlessly. And if they like that, then and they make bread, say, and after they've made enough bread for their family, they say, "Oh, Jonathan, I'll listen to you for 15 minutes." And I say, "Oh, have you got any spare bread?" Then do you know what I mean? Then um, it's not like, it's a different way of looking at it. I think that's making honest money, because it's like realizing that I'm doing it for, I'm not doing this for me. Do you know what I mean? It's this cosmopolitanism. It's not sort of I-centered, self-centered, and we're all kind of like somehow we have to reach a common trajectory. But in working for each other, um, we are already in a living community, and all our needs are actually
see,
there.
let me try and fly this one past you then, because I would really like to uh have somewhere for the arts, yeah, and like a gallery or a temple, yeah, a building, and I I want people to make that happen.
Mhm.
And again, I don't want to fall into I don't want I mean, I can't do it. I can't like do my tea and get the slaves to all
Yeah,
come.
yeah, yeah. So
um
how that would work is, you've got the village, and the baker's baking bread all day long. He's fed his family, and then everyone, he keeps just putting the loaves on the shelf once they're made. Everyone who needs a loaf in that village comes and gets it when they need it, and then there's a few loaves left, and like the baker, one of them is a shoemaker, and the baker says, "Oh, can you mend my shoe?" And they take a loaf and say, "Yeah, I'll mend your shoe," and it goes on like that. And then at the end of the day, there's a few loaves left, and the useless artists who haven't got anything constructed, physical to give, they get fed with the leftover loaves. That's how it happens.
yeah, I mean, I
Otherwise,
agree.
those loaves are just going to rot and go to
That's
waste. So we
yeah,
give them to the life that you cannot put a value on. You can't put a value on
but this is the thing.
life, art,
I
or
think
culture.
until that becomes reality, we can talk about it, and some people will listen up to a point, and some people will then turn off, and it's like, well, I can't, some people won't be able to keep up with it, and for some it's too abstract, and some's too wordy, and some's too chatty, and some's going to be too British or whatever, and there's all kinds of reasons why people
All
are,
excuses why people don't want to think about things.
yeah,
Yes.
in a way, yes. And but in a way, it's also then about becoming more adept at the presentation of why these ideas are important. And
Yeah, it's education.
I might be
Education.
far from being adept at that, but the striving has to be, which is why I'm struggling to try and bring some of these concepts back on the table, because I think
Yes.
you get that right, you
Yes.
get the communication right of the values that underpin something like this. And it is morality, and it is idealism again, and beauty, and being linked collaboratively with other people.
Yes.
Once people, if you can actually get people to see the ideas behind that, that's when people can say, yes, I want to actually get involved with this because I see this person or these people are,
I can see it, because then it's like, I understand. You're
yeah,
not you're not forcing me, you're not persuading me. I understand,
yeah.
and
And
I
so
agree.
this is why you know, some people say, well, it's, you know, oh, the social media, internet, or, you know, this is all just, you know, talking heads and things like this. But I don't see it like that. I think it
we're
has
trying
to
to
be,
help educate,
it has
offering
to be
education.
done. It is
Yeah.
a process of education. And even if you just get one other person to be fired up with the same idealism for what one is trying to do, because we're not, this is, no one will ever talk to you like this from Amazon. No, they'll talk, you'll talk to another human being for maybe half an hour in an interview at Amazon. The rest of the time you'll be treated like a piece of meat.
Mm.
And this is the difference. And this
Yeah,
is,
so it's not a dialogue. Instead of being captured in dialect, thrown what this way and that way, we're talking about dialogue, communication, talking with people, a discourse, so both
yeah,
sides are included.
and this is what money really should be. Mercurial is something that flows between, and it can be the mercury of communication, it can be the mercury of dialogue, or it can be the mercury of how money flows. But that mercury as an energy to communicate ideas, and then they can become reality through, and again, I don't want to go back to, this sounds so abstract, like manifesting things in reality. So to be concrete, yeah, to have places of education, beautiful places devoted
And that's work.
to the
That's like
arts.
picking up bricks, putting them on one another, cementing them, putting the
Yeah,
plaster, painting it. So
yeah,
that's manifestation of reality.
it is. It is. And those people also would work for you. And again, I would,
No,
it's like
they don't work for you. Yeah, work
you
for
get
you.
a
Yes, yes,
contractor. I
but
mean, if you,
not in the sense of boss and servant.
well, that's why I'd,
It's that
you know,
we're all working for each other.
to see that differently in terms of, if you contracted, even this whole idea of contracting someone to do work for you, that's what was beautiful about the first
Well,
Gotiana. All of those people were working there.
yeah,
Uh,
hang on.
yeah,
But yeah, let's just cut that first because that is an important point which I've misspoken on just now, in the sense, if we can clarify it, to get beyond I work for you, it's not me. There's a product I've made that you can have. It's not me that it's not my labor, it's not my work that I'm giving you. It's not me, because that's prostitution, the oldest job in history, which we're all involved in. But there's a product I've made. That's not my flesh and blood. You can take the product. That's what we're talking about. And because the arts and science and education and medicine, they don't have a similar product, like that. Real human sort of mysteries. That's where they have to eat the products that are left over at the end of the day.
mm.
That's where they get the profits that no one else needs.
Yeah, and in terms of products, I mean, it reminds me of
Yes.
something that Elia would often speak about, and it's nice to bring his name in at this point. In terms of having an anthroposophical product, and again, it's like, what can we produce? That's one side of it, but there's this other side of, it's ideas that and ideas for the future that are also something of great value, that I don't necessarily see people being willing to or able to get deeper into. So you have very, very complex philosophy on the one hand, or academic books that are almost impossible to read for the layman. And then on the other hand, you have already pre-packaged concepts of how you can talk about the
Dogma.
future,
Yeah.
about sustainability, climate
Yeah,
change,
yeah,
gender,
yeah.
and all of those.
Programs.
They're
Programs, just plug them in.
programs. And I that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. What I want to try to model is being able to bring a philosophical way of a thinking way of looking at life without getting lost in academic complexity,
Yeah.
and actually debating those things that are already on the table and saying, well, how do we want society to look like?
Mhm.
How can we counteract gross inequality
Mhm.
and defend freedoms, right?
Yes. Yes. So you're talking about living thinking, not prepackaged thinking. So thinking that's an ongoing conversation. You know, it's alive because it's dealing with the realities of the day by day, moment by moment, step by step. And that's not just modeling and programming. Those are helpful up to a point and within a certain niche. But what you're talking about is real living thinking.
Well, it's interesting. They'll always try and tell you on the internet, get all of your systems worked out so perfectly that you can just go and do something completely different, and your
Oh,
business
right, yeah.
keep on churning over
Yeah,
money,
yeah,
just
yeah.
going up and up and up and
Yeah.
you don't have to do anything because your
Yeah,
systems are
but
so.
how's that going to work when everybody has Chat GPT AI working for them? Because then all you're going to have is robots talking to other robots. All the humans, what are we doing? Just sitting around swanning on our sun lounger.
Exactly, and so I think then you flip over into the reality that comes after that, and you say, well, no, actually, I want to talk to real people in real life,
Hmm.
and
With the
that's
things
when,
that the robots can't do.
yeah, because robots, again, like I think you're absolutely right, and I say this to people as well. It's like in 5 years, 10 years time, 5 years, it's going to be all of this stuff, all these jobs where people are doing this all day on the big. You go on the train, you see all these offices full of insurance companies and everyone doing this. It's gonna be gone, and then even like thinkers.
Unless half the world is kept in poverty, and so they can't get that kind of job, and then the people that are doing those jobs are only speaking,
But
only.
again,
Do you
this
know what I
is
mean?
well, that's my morality point, is bringing morality back on the table. Is how can I be happy when these guys are doing all my suffering for me?
Exactly. Yeah.
And hmm,